Welcome, welcome, my noble artist and talented troupe of theater trolls. This is your host, Dawn Westbrook, and let me say, I have missed you. But the good news is, ACT is back. And while many things might have changed since season 1, a lot of things have remained the same. For instance, I'm sitting right here with my glass of wine. And for the next few minutes, I hope you'll join me with a glass of something, because we're going to be talking with some of the best in the business as we focus on the craft of acting, the art of directing, and just embracing the process of this crazy career in the theater and entertainment world. I've got some amazing interviews lined up for you in the coming weeks, and this week is no exception. But first, this season's podcasts are being brought to you by both the Martha Hill Newell Playwrights Fund, whose commitment is to both local and national playwrights and holds the belief that the relevance and vitality of American theater depends on the continual infusion of new works, and Bookcliff Vineyards, whose wines are 100% crafted right here in the beautiful state of Colorado and are always something worth sharing. And are you ready to be the star of the evening, Rick St. Peter?
Let's go.
That's all right. Let's have at it.
Make me look good, Dawn.
You know what? Nothing but. Nobody can make you look anything but, honey. Okay, guys. So tonight's guest is a friend that I have known for over 33 years. He is an award-winning director, producer, and educator with his PhD and nearly 25 years of experience in both academia and professional theater. He is a Fulbright Scholar, a member of the Lincoln Center Theater Directors Lab. He was a participant in the La Mama Umbria International Directors Symposium in Spoleto, Italy. He has worked internationally in Romania, Dublin, London, where he is a fixture as a visiting lecturer, and I believe going again this spring at the Rose Bruford College of Theater and Performance, and he's worked in the Ukraine, the Czech Republic. And in 2002, he was the recipient of the Princess Grace Foundation Theater Award. I need to take a breath. He has taught at Texas Tech, Virginia Commonwealth University, Christopher Newport University, Clemson University, and the University of Toledo. From 2016 to 2020, he served as the inaugural chair of the directing committee of the Southeastern Theater Conference, also known to those of us in the Southeastern Theater of the country, SETC. He currently serves as the assistant professor of theater and is the program director at HBCU and prestigious Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia, and is currently working on a production of Twelfth Night, which opens at Virginia Commonwealth University on November 14th at the Singleton Center. And if I keep going on his accomplishments, we won't have an interview. So, Dr. Rick St. Peter, let me welcome you and say that if I would give anything to be playing my dream role of Viola in your production of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, but I won't. So welcome, 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 sir.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
Great. Let's take a little drinky.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what I'm drinking. Bookcliff Vineyards in a minute. Sounds like I've been drinking already.
All right, hit me.
So what are you drinking?
So I am drinking a 2019 Meritage from the barn at 678 Vineyard in Barbersville, Virginia.
Oh,
so I got married this summer to the most amazing woman ever, and during our wedding nuptials and everything, we were inundated with wine from friends and guests and what have you. So I have enough wine to last me until the end of time, I think. But this Meritage is really good. I just opened the bottle tonight. I'm not sure if I was supposed to open it. My wife's in Greece. I might be in trouble for opening it, but it's really good. So
wait, so Pat is in Greece. What's she doing there?
She just went on a trip. She's been on her bucket list her whole life. She's a librarian at Hopewell High School.
Yeah.
And they have a balanced calendar, so she gets like 2 weeks off in the fall. Because their summer is shortened. So she was like, hey, do you care if I go to Greece? And I was like, no, go for it. I've been. So she's been there since last week. She gets back Thursday. She's having a ball. I'm living vicariously through her pictures.
Oh my God. I just got back with my husband. So where is she in Greece?
So she's been in Crete the last 2 days. I think they're heading back to Athens soon. She posts her itinerary every morning, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Yeah, so she's having a ball. It's really great. I'm really happy for her. I'm loving that she's loving it. So, but I might be in trouble for drinking this wine without her.
You know what? If it's a problem, I'm going to be sending you a new bottle and you're going to tell me
Right on.
which one you want. So we'll just do a little switcheroo and, she won't know the difference.
She'll
But
never notice. She'll never
you'll
notice.
never notice. You're going to be getting one from Book Cliff Vineyards in a little while.
Right on. It's funny that because she's a librarian, so she doesn't miss a detail. She will absolutely notice.
And that's
She fact she fact checks me on everything. So I'll say something with absolute certainty, and she'll be like, "I don't think that's right."
she has a little Dewey Decimal System. Are you
Right,
taking it
exactly.
out of a
No,
cup?
I'm being like Jesus. I have water and wine just to protect my voice.
Okay,
So
so that's the other thing we wanted to talk about. Before we get going, I think
right.
we want to tell our listeners something that happened during our little pre-chat. But before we start, I believe that you were diagnosed recently with a pretty serious disease a few years back, and it might even affect your speech. We hope not. During this interview, and it's not because you've been drinking too much. It might be my excuse, but not yours. If you don't mind, and I think you said you actually wanted to, Rick, would
Yeah.
you tell, or Dr. P, would you please tell the listeners what your first experience, like what happened, habit you have?
Actually, instead of Dr. P, my students call me DSP because Dr. St. Peter doesn't exactly fall trippingly off the tongue. So
The
I go by DSP to all my students.
All right, DSP. I
Um,
liked Dr. P, but okay,
well,
okay.
we already know a Dr. P, so
Well, we
uh,
did.
from our past, yeah. So my current wife was my then girlfriend, and I'd been having like these weird symptoms with like my left eye being hard to open, and my voice feeling like it was like I was having to work extra hard to talk, and I was like, wow, this is weird. This must be a symptom of getting older. And then one night we were having dinner, and it was like my face was sliding off my skull. I was like, I couldn't talk, I couldn't swallow, I was having problems breathing, and I was like, I think I'm having a stroke. And so she took me to a patient first, and I walked into patient first, and they looked at me and they went, nah, man, we can't do anything for you here. You got to go right to the ER. And I got to the ER, and they were like waiting for me. I skipped the line, which is never a good sign. They took me back to the stroke room or whatever, and ran all the tests that they could run, and I wasn't having a stroke. And it took them about 24 hours to realize that I had this rare neurological condition called myasthenia gravis, um, which, in layman's terms, your body overproduces red blood cells, and those are the things that help fight diseases and ward off infections and things like that. But if they don't have anything to fight, they end up attacking your body.
Right.
And so that's what it does. It's called the snowflake disease because every snowflake is different, and it affects everybody differently. And so there are people who the gravis part, it used to kill you. Thankfully, there's enough medication and treatments now that you can manage it. I'm mostly in remission these days. I would say, but that's like saying, I don't know, I'm mostly pregnant. You either are or you aren't. But I like to think that I'm getting close. So in August of 21, it nearly killed me. I had to like call EMTs, and I couldn't speak, and I couldn't breathe, and they couldn't understand when I was on 911 where I was. My son was out. I was home by myself. I'm also a widower. I'd lost my first wife. And I was kind of laying on the floor in my apartment, and I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to just go to sleep and go find Laura. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, I can't have my 16-year-old son come home and find my body. And so I kind of willed myself to get up, and somehow or another I was able to make enough noise. Thankfully, there was an EMS place like not even a half a mile from our house. So they were there quickly enough that they got me on oxygen and got me breathing. And then that's when I started taking IVIGs. I have transfusions. At the time, I was having them like every 6 weeks. Now I'm having them every 12 weeks. So I don't have a lot of symptoms anymore, but occasionally, especially later in the evening, if I'm tired, it will affect my speech. And so I have to work extra hard to talk. I don't drink much anymore because alcohol also affects it. But
Right.
I was
And
not going to miss an opportunity to have a glass of wine tonight. But
not a glass of wine with Dawn Westbrook Boyd. So yeah,
yes,
it is. So he does. He has a red. What do they call the red?
my red solo cup.
Red Solo cup full of water. If we need to take a break, we will. We'll go fill that up again.
Yeah,
And yeah, you can switch your water into wine like Jesus.
right.
Yeah, it's
Well,
also
so that's one of the advantages of being named Saint Peter is that I've got those connections.
and actually, I don't know if you're a Christian or not. I don't know if you're an atheist. I know you kind of did a switcheroo around. I've been keeping up with you on Facebook, but
Uh-huh.
Peter was like the biggest disciple, and
Right,
he had the physicality of what you've got. So it actually is pretty fitting. He was the very first disciple. He was supposed
right,
to be Jesus's favorite disciple,
right.
and but he was the
And
one
he
that
was crucified upside down, which was
was he really?
wild. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he kind of didn't really stand up for Jesus in the garden, and I don't blame him. I mean, they were kind of killing people, and he was like, "I
right,
don't know this guy." And then, anyway, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day.
right.
We talk about Jesus Christ Superstar. I think you saw it this
I
weekend.
did. Yeah, I
We'll
did.
talk about that in a minute, DSP. But myasthenia gravis is also known as GMG, and I was talking to Carl, who is an anesthesiologist, and
Right,
he would take this kind of thing lightly. And for breathing, he's the breathing specialist as an
right.
anesthesiologist, and it is an autoimmune disease,
Yep,
and it impacts the neuromuscular system. And the other day, it started to affect your jaws, right? So
right,
that affects your tongue and being able
right.
to formulate words. And I started thinking, Rick, after we got off the phone, I thought, it affects your vision, which it did for you. It affects your breathing. It
Mhm.
affects your mobility
Right.
and your speech pattern. And those are all pretty important functional, physical functions that you need as a director or an actor of the theater.
Or to live.
You really
So it's I have to be careful. Like I said, I'm feeling almost normal these days,
good.
but I still have to be careful with how I manage it, especially when I'm in rehearsals. It's like it's weird. There was that meme going around during COVID where it was a picture of Captain Picard and it said something like how every day feels in 2021, and he's sitting there going damage report. And so I wake up every morning and I kind of check in with my body and go damage report and just see where we are, because I there's been times where I will go to bed feeling absolutely normal, and then I'll get up, or I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll be like, uh-oh. um and it's I just have to take a day where I don't get out of bed, and then the next day it's like it never happened. Everything's totally back to normal.
Right,
So going into rehearsals where I'm going to be working 6 days a week for the next 6 weeks, I really have to kind of monitor what's happening. And like today, when I told you that I talked to you the other day, I was going to play golf with my stepson and one of my buddies today, and I just thought, just the amount of walking that will take, even with a golf cart,
right.
I don't want to risk it because I
Yeah.
start rehearsals Tuesday, and it would be better. And plus, I knew I was going to be talking to you tonight,
Which
so I
always
kind
takes a lot of energy with me. So,
of so I just kind of treated the day like I'm preparing for this, and
oh,
that's my focus. And I kind of just stayed. My stepson and I had lunch instead, which was lovely. And I used more medication. The main medication I take is called Mestinon, and at the worst,
Mastodon.
I was taking like 4 doses a day throughout the day.
Hmm.
Plus, I was taking high doses of prednisone, which was awful and made me gain like 40 pounds. But for I would say like the last 6 months or so, I'm off the prednisone completely, and I have been for a while.
Good.
I've only been taking the Mestinon either once a day or as needed. Today, I took it several times to kind of just help protect my voice for tonight. So hopefully we'll be
Oh,
okay
you're so
as I
sweet.
as I chug this wine.
And I will tell you, people, you can't see his glass of wine, but holy shit, it is a big old glass. The only person I've seen
Yeah.
do that big a glass was Dr. Karen Ward down at what is the
Hampton University.
Hampton
Yeah.
University, yeah, who I love and adore, who we both went to VCU together, which is not, is it still VCU? It's still
It's
VCU.
still VCU. Yeah.
All right.
But I don't do anything halfway, Don. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it the whole way.
That's what she said, honey. You're talking Dawn Westbrook. You got to go all the way. She had a king of the big old, like, carafe. Anyway,
Right.
let me tell you, because I'm so excited that this year I have a really great sponsor, Vineyard here in Colorado, and it's called Book Cliff Vineyards. And I don't know, nobody can see it, but
I
yeah,
can see it. Yeah.
it's I went to the tasting room, which is never a bad thing. I went
Not
on.
at all.
Yes, and I've got my lovely Book Cliff Vineyard, which anybody can pick up at the tasting rooms, or you can buy it online. It has Book Cliff Vineyards on there, and I'm drinking my wine out of it. And Rick can see my lovely little gifted wine glass earrings. They're little dangle earrings that Candace at Book Cliff Vineyards gave me as well. And
Those are super cool.
aren't they fun? They're
Yeah.
really large. They actually look like a pour, like what your wine is.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
They're huge. But what I'm drinking tonight is one that I haven't had before, and I had it the other night at the tasting room, and it is, I've got a pretty bright light on there right now, but
Yep.
it is the 2023 Rosé. And when I got to the tasting room, two women were already drinking it, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you have to try this." And I'm not a big rosé person because it's usually too sweet.
Right.
But,
Right.
I will tell you that that the wine actually, when I tasted it just a few minutes ago while you were talking, it is absolutely, it's dry. It's not too sweet, which
Okay.
it makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Can you see it? It's kind of a salmon color.
Yeah. 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 It's got a nice color to it.
It's beautiful. I'm not a very fishy person. I don't really like salmon, and I didn't really like Greece as far as the food went because I'm not a fishy person. But
Oh yeah. When I was there, I loved it.
now my husband did too, and give me beef any day. But anyway, they say that it's kind of racy in its acidity, and that it's very light, and it is. And I'm actually, let me take one more taste because I'm tasting. He made me guess. He said, "What fruits do you taste?" I thought it was grapefruit. No, it's not that citrusy. It kind of tastes like strawberry and a little bit maybe of like blackberry, raspberry. You're exactly.
Nice.
So it's really refreshing. And I will tell you that mine is really cold because I'm using one of those.
Yeah.
Keep the old big ice probe in there.
I like that. That's like me with my aerator for my Meritage, sucking all that oxygen out. Flavor of the grapes. Everything I know about wine, I learned from Sideways. So I don't really know anything about wine.
Pinot Noir. It's all about Pinot Noir. If you watch Sideways, it's all about Pinot Noir. But anyway.
And no Merlot.
No, and no Merlot. We don't do Merlots. No, I barely do Syrah. But anyway, I feel like I'm out in the sunshine, and mine is really cold. So if you're listening, go online and get yourself a bottle. And I think their little tagline or their slogan is something worth sharing. So grab yourself a bottle. We're leaving summer. We're going into fall. You can still share this. You've got picnics. You got people coming over. So go get yourself a bottle. And without further ado, let's do another cha-ching. Cheers, sweet
Right on.
DSP. And I always do these pre-chats with everybody.
Mhm.
And thank you for doing it with me. And last week's guest, Candace Joyce, who is a really wonderful director and actress here in town, she and I discussed this. And I think you said one of the things you wanted to discuss was there's kind of a misnomer that you have to be in New York or LA to be legit or to be able to work in the business. Why don't you talk a little bit about that first, and then we'll get into those areas.
So I sort of stumbled into theater late, and had some wonderful mentors from day one. But maybe the most important one is a man named Benny Sato Ambush, who is so important to me that he is my son's godfather. And he used to be what was called an I-5 director back in the old days. He lived in the Bay Area. He was an associate artistic director at ACT there for a while, but he directed all up and down I-5 in California, from the Old Globe in San Diego to, I believe, Oregon Shakes up in Ashland and just about everywhere in between.
Wow.
And I talked to him once about, why not New York? He was born and raised in Worcester, Massachusetts. He'd gone to Brown for undergrad, so he was in that area. And he said something that stuck with me forever. He said, I go to New York when New York invites me. And I thought that was a great way to look at it. And I kind of, grew up, I was a military brat, so I grew up all over the place, but I'm primarily from Virginia. And when I was at VCU, my then wife, Laura, she was a year ahead of me in the MFA program at VCU. And so she got her MFA in 97. She was waiting for me to get my MFA in 98. And then we were gonna like move to Chicago and take on Chicago. But in the year that I was in school, she got hired to teach full time and fell in love with it. She was teaching at Nottoway High School. She was commuting from Richmond every day. It was extraordinary.
Wow. So when you were dating, she was in grad school. You were still at Christopher Newport. She was traveling, getting her master's, driving to Richmond every day.
My senior year at Christopher Newport was her first year at VCU. We were living in Newport News together.
Right.
Then we did summer stock the summer after I graduated together. We were both at the theater at Limekiln in Lexington, Virginia. Then we moved to Richmond to finish, she was starting her second year of grad school in my first year. So when she finished, she got this job fell into her lap and she loved it. And we were like, oh my God, it's a salary and a job with benefits and all these things. And at the same time, my last year, as I was, basically just finishing up my thesis, I started getting hired around town as a fight director. I did a show at Theater 4 with Zach Knighton. It was the Hardy Boys and the Mystery of the Haunted House, where they had the sword fight. I'd come under the influence of David Leong, who is one of the great fight directors who ever lived.
David Leong, he's
Yes.
top in the business. When he was at VCU, they had an article in American Theater Magazine about
Yeah. And so I kept doing that, and then I got hired to direct some shows. I got hired to direct Tartuffe at Virginia Union. Theater 4 hired me to direct some tours from Tartuffe and I just kept getting directing work. And I kept thinking, while I'm working, why do I want to go to another city and stand in the back of the line when I'm working here? Then in 2000, I did the director's lab at Lincoln Center. And by that point, I was the associate artistic director at Barksdale.
How did you get that?
How did I get what? Lincoln Center?
Uh-huh.
I applied and I had some references. I don't think they reopened the lab after COVID, which kind of breaks my heart. But it was great. I mean, it was great. We had like 3 or 4 weeks in New York. Some amazing directors we got to work with. We got to see some amazing shows. But the thing that I discovered while I was there was that a lot of people were like working as assistant directors or trying to make their break. It was a small professional theater, but I was an associate artistic director. I was doing my own work. So the closest I came to going to New York was after Theater Virginia closed in 2002. A friend of mine who was an actor in New York, he was like, you got to come. Now's the time. And Laura and I looked at it. And, at the time we had a 3-year-old daughter and we were like, how can we afford all of this? And right after that, I got hired to run a theater in Kentucky. So I went that way.
What theater was that?
It was called Actors Guild of Lexington in Lexington, Kentucky.
The One Actors Theater of Louisville. Was it close to that?
No. Yeah, it was about an hour away.
Okay.
Mark Masterson was the artistic director at Actors Theater at the time, and he was great. I got to talk to him on a number of occasions.
Cool.
So I did that. I developed a play at Actors Guild while I was there by a friend of mine named Brian Hampton, who's a fantastic New York playwright now and was just kind of starting this. I produced his first professional play. And a few years later, we got invited to do it at the Midtown International Theater Festival in New York. So, New York invited me. So I went, did the show, had a great time, and loved it. But I don't regret not ever trying to tackle New York or Chicago. Yeah. Because I've kind of constantly been working, and I've been able to accidentally develop an international career, which I never knew was going to happen.
Yes, you have.
So I don't have a lot of regrets.
No, well, you know what? That's what you don't want to have. That's one of the things that when people are on their deathbed and they're old and they say, don't not live, I wish I had spent more time with so and so. I wish I had done this. I wish
Right.
don't die with regrets because
The
I,
one thing the one thing that makes me a little bit nuts is that oftentimes people like board members of nonprofit regional theaters will look at a resume where someone has directed something, in a 10-seat theater in Light My Fart, New Jersey, and they call it off Broadway. And because it has Broadway, it gets taken more seriously than the work that I've been doing. That is the only thing that makes me crazy,
yeah.
but that's a kind of minor inconvenience.
That is, it is. I do know that I liked having some New York credits. I lived in New York. I knew that I didn't want to get married and start my life unless I lived in New York. And I graduated
Right.
in 85 from VCU, and I knew I wanted to go to New York and have that experience. I knew that I needed that, and I didn't want to move forward without it. But I wasn't married. I didn't have kids.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but you don't have to live there. And sometimes, like you said, why wait in line when you're already getting all this work?
Right. Yeah, I just couldn't walk away from it. I was for about 12 years from like 1998, 11 years, 1998 to 2009. I was either in pre-production or rehearsal or producing a show for like every day for all, And the other thing that Benny said when he was looking around for jobs, when he was coming out, was like he looked at it, he's like, what does an artistic director do? Oh, you get to pick all the plays, plus you get to have a house and a dog and a yard and a wife and kids if you want all those things.
Yeah.
He was like, I want that job. And I was like, yeah, I want that job too. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of my career goal.
Yeah.
And then I did it for 6 years, and had a lot of fun and a lot of not so much fun, as anybody who's been an artistic director would probably attest. My hero Richard Eyre, I read his diaries, and I'm like, oh my god, this guy's running the National Theater in London and has all the same problems I have at my little theater in Kentucky.
Yep.
He's just got stars and more zeros in his budget.
Yeah, he does. We're going to talk about him in a minute because he's one of your mentors and you're going to be seeing
Yeah.
him soon. All of the international work. I think I am absolutely just in awe of the international work that you've done and all of the different, your dissertation was on what?
It was on early British director, actor, playwright, and theorist Harley Granville Barker, and sort of his attempts to develop a national theater in London in the early part of the 20th century that probably would have succeeded had World War One not happened.
Okay.
Um, and I actually just I'd heard of Barker a little bit, as a theater student, but I really became fascinated by him because Richard Eyre was fascinated by him.
Right.
And so when I started reading everything that Richard Eyre wrote, and he kept referring back to Granville Barker, I was like, well, let me go and see more about him. And the more I read about him, the more I was like, oh my God, this guy is like the way he was doing Shakespeare 100 years ago is the way I think we still should be doing it today.
How should
Uh,
we be doing it today?
Quick, fast, pace. When he opened the Winter's Tale at the Savoy Theater in 1914, I think it was, um, the actress Kathleen Nesbitt was playing Perdita, and before opening night, he wrote in lipstick on her mirror, be swift, be not poetical." And I kind of love that note, and I give it all the time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Be swift, be not poetical. Don't be insulated. Don't get
Mhm.
so into yourself that you're so into the way you're saying the lines
Right.
that it's like Hamlet's speech almost. But I
Yes. Yeah.
love that. I need to,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to write that down and remember that. We'll talk about Richard Eyre in a minute. We do have, you and I have a lot of like 6 degrees of separation, but really
Right.
not 6 degrees of separation. We have like almost like 1 degree of separation.
Right.
I knew of you and I knew of your work in Richmond. I've got quite a few years on you as a senior. But when you did Tartuffe, you brought somebody to Richmond
Yeah.
who I ended up directing and who I
Yeah.
adore and who I actually texted this morning and is going to be on my season 3. His wife
Great.
was on season 1.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me who you brought into Tartuffe and tell me who that is and who we all love.
That is the great Scott Witchman, who,
Yes.
in all my travels in theater, uh, he's the only actor I've ever come across in a community, and for him, it's here in Richmond, that if you put his name on a poster, you're going to sell more tickets.
You'll
He's
sell
a
out.
rock star in Richmond. It's really kind of an amazing thing that he's developed. And so I've directed him a number of times. Tartuffe was our first. I did another Tartuffe with him in Kentucky. He played when I did Avenue Q at the Warehouse Theater in South Carolina. He was Princeton for me. He was in Rounding Third by Richard Dresser, where so it's funny. So that's a two-hander about Little League baseball coaches, and my Tartuffe and my Hamlet were the two guys who I had play the
Oh,
roles.
oh, how
And so
wonderful.
we did the True West thing where they
Reverse the roles.
we did, and
Oh,
it was maybe it was one of the cooler things that I've ever directed because I wasn't interested in them just kind of imitating what the other was doing. So it was almost like directing two separate shows at the same time.
it
Because
is.
when Scott was actor A, I wanted him to have his impulses for that character, and when Adam Lucky, who was my Hamlet, was playing actor A, I wanted him to have his impulses. So I didn't want them imposing on each other, and it was a lot of fun doing that. And
How did you meet Scott? Because I know you're an athlete. I know he loves his sports, and I know
he does.
now, my husband adores Scott.
I've never met anybody who doesn't adore Scott.
I know he did the SEAL team training, and
Mhm.
we were all worried when he joined the service and all of that. And
Huh?
but he's in the Navy, and Carl was a Navy helicopter pilot, my husband.
Right.
And but yeah, Carl, I've worked with Scott so much, and that Carl saw him so much in Richmond that they always talk. They talk about the Boston Red Sox.
Right.
So he's just one of those people that his energy just is a driving force. And Ava, his
Yeah.
is just brilliant. She was on season one, and
The two of them together are a nonstop comedy duo.
they're
It's
they're
hilarious to see them together.
they're a dynamo, and they're both
Yeah.
beautiful people. And
Yeah.
I directed him in Scapino. So thank you for
Yep.
bringing him to Richmond. Um,
Oh, also with wasn't the late great Jack Parrish in that as well?
Loved Jack Pearson. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. There was a scene where Scott had to stuff him in a fucking bag, and
Yeah.
Jack was
Yeah.
not happy about it. And
Yeah.
Scott was the actor that he is, wanted to work it and rework it.
Right.
To go on stage and go, Jack, you just gotta let him do it. I had
Yeah.
to take a break and go, Jack was like, I wanted to smoke a cigarette and get out of there and smoke a take.
Exactly.
But Jack and I did Crazy for You at Mill Mountain Theater, and I know
Okay.
Jack for years. So yes, he was in it, and David Clark.
Yeah. When I got hired to run my theater in Kentucky, I hired Scott for my first season to do the Santaland Diaries, which killed. It was like our best-selling show while I was there. And Jack was the first director I brought in. I brought him in. He directed art for me. So I tell people all the time, the reason for my success has to do almost as much with the people around me as it does with me, and I'm not limited by a zip code. If I go somewhere, I want to bring these people with me. I've tried to do that as much as I can when circumstances will allow me. It's Jack, Scott, Steve Kohler as a lighting designer, Sarah Heifetz as an actor, and without them, I wouldn't be me. And so asking me to go someplace else and not bring my sort of theatrical family with me is a non-starter. I'm not
You,
interested in that.
you have just listed people that I would actually put on level with anybody on Broadway or anybody else.
Absolutely. The thing about
Yeah.
Scott is there's a genuineness to him
Oh,
that not only does he have it off stage, but he just radiates humanity on stage.
yes, he does.
And
Shares
he
the stage, even though he takes the stage.
but he shares it, but he's gonna throw fastballs at you, and you better be on your toes.
That's why David Clark and Jack Parrish were so good.
Yeah. So the Hamlet that I did in Kentucky, Jack was also my Polonius,
Oh,
and he turned the letter reading scene where he reads Hamlet's poetry that he writes to Ophelia. He turned that into like a virtuoso one act play every night
Jack did.
that Jack did, and
Yeah,
it was
Jack
just
is brilliant.
worth the price of admission just to watch him.
We had a blast. I adored working with him, and I actually put together his memorial service at Barksdale Theater.
Oh, did you? Yeah, I was in Texas at the time, I think. Bill Blair sent me one of Jack's Hawaiian shirts, and I still have it.
We all were supposed to wear them. And
Yeah.
Bill Blair is one I said, I don't really know you even that well, but if I die, would you please speak at my memorial?
He's a
Because
rock star too.
he
Yeah.
he and Jack were so close though. And Bill
Yep.
Blair was
Yep.
someone who I worked with and used a lot. When I wasn't on
Yeah.
stage, I was directing him. I used him in Trip to Bountiful as the sheriff. He was
Yeah.
unbelievably brilliant. He and Jack just shared this kind of 1970s Marlboro
Yeah.
sexy man.
Yes. Yes.
I fucking loved them both. I mean, I just
Yep.
thought they carried with them this macho sexiness that,
I
now people don't like, but I loved it.
Richmond Shakes hired me to direct Henry V. We were going to go up at H-Croft in the summer of 2020. So
Uh-oh.
that didn't
That didn't
happen.
happen.
But they flew me in. I was in Louisiana at the time. They flew me in, and I actually cast the show that spring, and I'd cast Bill as the King of France.
Oh, brilliant.
Sarah Heifetz was going to be Princess Catherine's nurse, and I was.
Who was to
I
be
was so
Princess
excited.
Catherine?
My daughter. I'd
Oh,
cast her. She's an actor in New York, and I'd cast her as Catherine. Jeff
my
Clevenger was going to be in it.
Okay, love him too. When
Yeah.
he was in Sideman when I did it, and your late wife, Laura,
Yes.
was our brilliant, brilliant dialect coach
Yes.
because
Yes.
I had to play Crazy Terry and had to have this kind of
Right.
Brooklyn-y, nasty, here's your macaroni motherfuckers, as Crazy Terry. And she was fantastic.
That was my first show on staff. Randy hired me during the final weeks of Ella and her fella Frank. He hired me as his associate. But I think like right after you guys went into rehearsal for Sideman,
Yes.
and so that was the first show I saw. I saw like the final dress rehearsal, and I had never seen you on stage before,
Oh,
and I was fucking blown away, Dawn. You were. This is a word that Richard Eyre likes to use. You were incandescent. One of the things that he talks about is like he's convinced that if you turn all the lights off and put an infrared camera on the stage, stars burn brighter than everybody else does. And that was kind of how I saw you. I'd known you by reputation, for a while, but man, you yanked that show out and ran with it.
well, I'll tell you what, coming off the day I've had today, I didn't even get a call back for a show that I went to today and I was perfect for.
Yeah.
That makes me feel so good. I don't do this podcast to get those kind of compliments, but I will take it. And I really, coming from you, I really appreciate that. It was, I feel, in hindsight, like I told Carl, I said, I feel like I've got imposter syndrome because since I've moved to Colorado for him and for my daughter Sydney, and I was working so much in Richmond and I had already established myself. I think I took it for granted.
Right.
And I didn't really appreciate it. And I thought, oh, it won't be a problem. I'll work, blah, 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 blah. Well, I can't get any casting directors.
Yep.
Can't get any movie directors. I can't get any theater directors. I today couldn't even get a call back for a show that I was perfect for. And I went in and nailed it. I spent 3 days. I didn't go to yoga. Carl went, are you going to leave your office? I'm like, no, because I'm having to time this to cut down my monologues to make sure I don't go over 3 minutes. Like I professionally made sure that I had it down pat. So I treated them across the table the way I like to be treated when I'm directing. I made a joke that totally appropriate. I did what I did. And then at 4 o'clock today, got thank you, but no thank you. And I went, I can't come read for you.
Yeah. It sucks. I have for the longest time back when they used to send out letters, I kept all my rejection letters.
You know who else kept them? Do you know who else kept a list? Oh my God, you're gonna love this because you love London. Hannah Weddingham.
Oh, Hannah Waddingham.
Hannah Waddingham. I said it wrong.
Yeah.
She kept a list. She worked on Game of Thrones, and she was like one of the nuns that escorted the woman down, the naked woman down the path. She and all the women that were extras in that scene had shows they had to do that night, treating them like pieces of shit.
Yep.
And
she was one that she was told like early in drama school that
too big, you're too tall.
Have a face. Yeah, didn't have the face, didn't have anything for it.
I think, and you and I agree on this, I've read your post. You and I think she's one of the sexiest women
Oh my God, are you
on
kidding?
stage.
Oh,
I'm like, she
oh,
carries such weight and such height, and she's brilliant. And
she's a
all those
broad.
costumes they had her in, and
Yeah,
Ted Lasso, and she's a
yeah,
singer, and she's just so nice.
yeah.
And she said, honey, I kept a list. And don't think I didn't. So these people,
Right,
now that I've got all these Emmys and these little, not
right.
Grammys and all, People Choice and all the, she said, I've kept a list, and now they're calling me, and I'm going, you know what? You didn't really want to have a whole lot to do with me a little while ago,
Right,
so I'm going to wait, and then I'll get back with you later. But thank you
right, right.
so much.
I mean, early in her career, Judi Dench was told she had the perfect face for radio because also young Judi Dench was very sexy. So I don't know what the Brits were thinking with either one of
Was
them.
did you watch the ladies the tea the women
I
who?
have not. No,
Oh my
I've kind of
God.
queued it up a couple times, and with my
Okay,
love of all things British, I'm surprised I've never seen
okay.
it. But yeah,
Well, you've got with
it's
the
like her, Judi Dench, Helen Mirren, Maggie Smith,
yes, and Olivier's
is
ex.
Joan
Yeah,
Plowright.
Joan
Joan
Plowright.
Plowright, yeah.
And Joan Plowright has what I have actually now. I was just diagnosed with macular degeneration. You want to talk about diseases and degenerative diseases? We all are like we're we're all like sitting on a time bomb at any minute.
Right.
But my eyesight is going, and so I have to have
Uh,
surgery on. I'm going to the doctor on the 10th. I have to have surgery to remove some of this like drusen fluid. But I'm losing my sight, and
yeah.
Joan Plowright is blind as a bat, and she
And
has
Judy,
hearing aids. And Maggie
yep,
Smith, they're all sitting. They all get together once a year. That's the only time they
right.
do it. They're sitting around. They're cracking each other up. They're blasting each other right and left, and they're sitting there. And she says something about the fact Maggie Smith says something like, oh, Olivier, oh, he never bothered me. He scared everybody else, but he knew. And she said, Joan Plowright's hearing aid, and Maggie Smith is saying, none of us in Hollywood ever got cast because it was Judy got all the roles. Once she went to Hollywood, and Joan says, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, my hearing aid fell out. And Maggie Smith says, do you want one of mine? And she goes, no, no, no. I just want to know what I can't see your faces. I want to know what you said. And she says, well, we're just talking about how Judy got all the roles. And she goes, oh, yes, I remember. I was told when I wanted to go to Hollywood, she goes, my American agent said to me, well, I will keep my eye out. If there is a cameo that Judy does not want, I will give you a call. And Judy says, I'm sorry, but that is so rude. And Maggie says, oh, it is not. That's exactly the truth, and we all know it.
Right.
But they all are so wonderful. And you know what? The
Yeah,
table's empty with her chair now. And
I
I
know.
feel like I've lost a friend, and I met her once. I saw Linus Lovitch 3 times,
Uh-huh.
and she was in England. We saw it when it first came out in 1988. She was doing it when I was studying, and we went and saw it. We had to study it and write a paper.
There are some people, like, I thought Peter Brook was going to live forever. Yeah, I was really devastated. When I was in Romania this past summer, I actually saw a production from his theater in Paris, and it was literally called Brooks Unfinished Tempest. And it probably should have stayed unfinished, but it was their kind of way of honoring him.
Why should it
Uh,
stayed unfinished?
it
What do
just
you
it was not it wasn't very good. It was kind of unfocused. There were a couple of moments that were like brilliantly theatrically conceived of, and you could be like, ah, yeah, there's the master. But Maggie Smith is another one. You just assumed that she was gonna live forever.
we lost so many. We lost Gavin Creel. I mean,
Gavin Creel younger than I am.
well, he's younger, but I mean, Laura died at what age?
Yeah, she was 44.
Yeah. I mean, that just fucking sucks.
Yep.
Cancer sucks, and it's not fair. And
Nope.
none of us know, but there's this thing where they say, God takes the best first. And I go, I don't know if I believe that because, I've got a lot of friends like you and other friends that are living a
I
long
mean, Donald Trump's going to live to be 200. I don't
Jesus
know if we're
Christ.
allowed to talk about politics.
But you know what people say, too mean to die.
Exactly.
There's the now I can't tell you one, two, three, four, five, six, seven more bullet points of things I want
Let's
to do.
go. Hit me.
Here we go.
I have all night.
You know what I do too, and you know what? If I have to break this up into two fucking episodes, we're doing because you're so brilliant. All right, now here we go. You recently said you worked in the Ukraine, and we know what's going on over there.
Yeah.
What part of the country? First of all, when did you go there? Was the war going on? Were you nervous? What production classes? Tell everybody what you did there.
So I have not been to Ukraine.
Okay.
I got connected with them through my Romanian contacts when the war started. There is a theater company in Kyiv called the Pro English Theater of Ukraine.
Okay.
And they are a Ukrainian theater company that performs in English. And their theater is actually in like an old World War II bunker.
Oh my God.
And so when the war started, a lot of people went there and they were like, well, hell, we've got this captive audience. Let's put on some shows.
They can't go anywhere. Let's do some theater.
Right. So they did it was either a Pinter or a Stoppard one act. I can't remember which one it was, like right after the war started that they streamed, and I saw it. And then Alex Borvinsky, who is the artistic director there.
Tell his last name, please, for me.
Oh, I can't. I would have to look it up. Boro Borovinsky. BOROVINSKIY.
I got you. Okay, I got it. Good.
Yeah. So he basically put out a call to Ukrainian writers and said, write about your experiences since the war has started. And they put on a series of one acts where they wanted to get Ukrainian actors with international directors. So they put out a call for directors.
See it online?
No, a friend of mine who knew them, she teaches at Trinity College in Dublin, but she's a Czech national. Somehow she was connected with them, so she sent me the link. So I contacted Alex, and we did this. We got together, we chatted, told him what I did. And so he asked me to direct. The first piece I did was a one-act piece called Robinson by a Ukrainian playwright called Vitaly Chinsky. And we did it, I want to say, like in April of 22. The war had just started. It's wild. So we were rehearsing over Zoom. It's 7-hour time difference. So I have the occasional 3 a.m. rehearsal because they could get into the theater at 10 a.m. their time. And that was the only time they had available. So I was up at 3 a.m. rehearsing. There are times when we're in rehearsal and suddenly they stop and they all start looking up. And they're like, we have to pause because the air raid sirens are going off. And so we have to go someplace else. And what was really great about it was I was able to have a few rehearsals where my students got to observe. And finally, really? I was like, look, you fuckers, these guys are rehearsing plays in the middle of a goddamn war.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of them don't live at the theater. So they had to make their way across Kyiv by whatever transportation they could. And sometimes it would take them hours to get there, but they showed up, they were prepared, they were passionate. And I was like, I don't want to hear from you about why you can't come to rehearsal because you're having a bad day. Right. Because these people are putting their lives on the line to practice their art and craft.
It was all through Zoom. New things were going on in the back. Shit.
So over the past 18 months, I've done 3 pieces with them. They've all been one acts. If you go to my website, Robinson, Robinson was recorded on YouTube, and I have it on my website.
Okay, what is your website so I can add it to the Facebook and all of my social media?
richardstpeter.com with no period in St. Peter.
Okay, richardstpeter.com. I will add that to the Facebook page and all my social media, and then people can go there and check that out.
So it's been great. And this guy Alex is a genius, and I want to get to Ukraine as soon as I can.
It's like my husband, we were over in Greece and he went, you know how close we are to the Middle East? And went, I have no desire to go there.
Right. Yeah. So when I was in Romania this summer, I was at the Craiova International Shakespeare Festival, and there was a Ukrainian delegation there because they were starting a Shakespeare festival in Ukraine. and a lot of the participants in Romania, because it's right next door,
Yeah.
were going to Ukraine. Uh, I was getting married like a month after I got back, so I did not go to Ukraine.
Right.
But if I'd had the opportunity, I absolutely would have gone.
Good for you. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't have the guts. I think I'm too scared. There's a part of me, the older I get, the more I go, I don't even know if I want to get on this plane. I don't know if I really want to drive this far. I don't know. The older I get, the more you go, I'm testing fate.
In undergrad, Christopher Newport, yeah, Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia. His name is Nam Panofsky, and he's from Macedonia. And he kind of opened the door to theater in Eastern Europe for me. And Kenneth Campbell loved him. So when I got to VCU, Campbell would talk about Nam all the time. Nam would come up on occasion. Because of Nam, I got to meet and work with Maria Irene Fornes and Jean Claude Von Italy. And I didn't know who these people were. I had no idea that these people were like legends in the off Broadway movement at the time. But I was in a production of Mud by Maria Irene Fornes.
You were in
Uh,
it, not worked
I
on
was
it, in it?
no, I was in it. This was back when I thought I was going to be an actor. And I was in a production of A Fable by Jean Claude Van Italy. They both came to see the show. They both spent time with us in rehearsals. And so Nam came, he was trained by Joseph Chaikin in the States, and he kind of came out of that sort of avant garde 60s Lower East Side. Moises Kaufman talked about this. He first moved to America because he'd grown
Yes,
up in Venezuela, and they had all these international theater festivals, and all these avant garde companies would come through. And the
yes.
first time he saw a show on Broadway, he was like, oh, wow, real furniture on stage. This is so avant garde. So that kind of work was like my early influence to theater. And even now, like if I have a show where I have to have a realistic set, I'm like, yeah. So
Oh, interesting.
what is super cool, and so Nam sort of, he sort of cracked the door open. And then when I went to La Mama Umbria, the Romanian director Andrei Serban was one of the directors that was there, and
That's
he's
a
actually
new name. That's a new name we brought up. So say it again, Andrea who?
Andrei Serban,
Can you spell it?
Serban, who
S.
was at Columbia for the longest time. He ran the
Oh,
acting
in
program.
up in New York, up in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Manhattan or Manhattan. Okay.
But he was sort of spirited out of Romania during the Ceausescu era by Ellen
Oh, geez.
Stewart, who I got to meet and spend time with, and she was the force of nature that La Mama is. I mean, everybody called her Mama as soon as
Right.
you came into her orbit. You were one of her children, and I loved them both dearly. And so Andre kind of um, really opened Romanian theater to me, and I very quickly became influenced by him, and another Romanian director, Liviu Ciulei, who was the artistic director at the Guthrie Theater for a few years.
At the
Uh,
Guthrie?
yeah, and directed a brilliant. He ran the Bulandra Theater in Romania, and he did a brilliant Tartuffe at Arena Stage back when Zelda was still running it. Um,
So that was before you did the one with
oh,
Scott.
yeah, I never saw it. I've only read about it. He
Okay.
also Chule directed Kevin Kline in Hamlet at the Public in New York.
One of my
Uh,
favorite actors, I have to say.
yeah. What I became fascinated by was how, because of issues like censorship and what was happening behind the Iron Curtain, particularly in Romania with Nicolae Ceausescu running that country into the ground, that Romanian directors had to direct through metaphor to comment on what was happening in the world around them.
You know, this is before your time. I went in 1993, 94 to CBU Romania, and I went with Dr.
Yeah.
Campbell and Bev Ambleton and my first husband, Ron Barnett, and Rhonda Kaiser. We
Uh
went in
huh.
2 rooms and I did Zelda. It was amazing. And then we did it in Budapest. Okay, so we did CB Romania, and that we arrived in. I'll never forget it. We arrived on a trip. Bev Appleton and Kenneth Campbell and I, and we've been sleeping. We were on the train, and we arrived in
Yeah.
Romania, right in the middle of the fucking night.
Right.
No one's around. We got all these like trees, these little, I don't know
Uh
what
huh.
trees they were. and they were like hit by the moonlight. And I thought, oh my God, Vlad the Impaler is going to come out any 2 seconds. We had to wait in the train station, which was really sweet,
Right.
for our little person to come take us to our little teeny room. And then we had to get up the next morning and go. I had to walk so far to get bread. Like I found a little hole in the wall, literally a hole in the wall to get some bread.
So if
Cheese.
you were there in what, 93, 94, that's like
Yes.
right after the
Oh,
revolution. They're
this
still
was
getting
a
back on their
time.
feet.
This was before 2001, where you had to take your own needles,
Right.
take your own antibiotics. You had to
Right.
take all it because Ceausescu had said no new needles, no. But he had been killed like the year before we got there.
Yeah, they shot him on television. On Christmas Day, they put him on trial and killed him and his wife.
And his
Elaine.
wife. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's Cebu is a beautiful city. It's a beautiful country. I love the people. I love the people. I love the theater. I lived there for a year in
A
2016,
year?
2017. Yeah, when I did my Fulbright there.
Right in the heart of downtown Cebu.
I was in Craiova, which is
Okay, I
south
was in
of Cebu.
Cebu. I was in
Right.
Cebu.
I've been to Cebu a couple of times. It's a great town.
It was hard to find bread. It was hard to
Yeah.
find cheese. It was
It's
not
not anymore.
It was
Yeah.
not hard to find vodka.
Right. Romania has kind of become my sort of spiritual, theatrical home away from home.
You are like so more intellectually like you so like you are so far past where I have ever like even thought.
Well, I appreciate it.
Oh,
I travel a lot and I read a lot of books, I guess.
well, I thought I traveled and I thought I read a lot, but I guess I don't. Let's talk about Richard Eyre. Let's talk about you going and the lecturing that you're going to do next spring. Someone who has been your mentor and your idol for years and years and years. You said to me that you have what you call almost like an arrogant ignorance with athletic. You have kind of an athletic. What did you say? Not macho.
So I grew up as an athlete. I played baseball in high school. I played baseball in college. I quit the baseball team my senior year to become a theater major.
Because you met Laura and you'd seen her in The King and I, and you fell in love.
Yep. So I remember. So I called my dad, who had been my coach, growing up, and like I told Carl the other day, I wore number 8 my whole life because my dad's favorite player was Carl Yastrzemski.
Right.
So I wore number 8 because my dad was like the greatest dad ever, and I wanted to honor him. So I remember my senior year, I call him and I'm like, hey, I have some good news and some bad news. And he's like, oh, well, what's the good news? And I said, wow, I've been cast in a play. I'm going to be an actor. And he went, oh, what's the bad news? And I said, I'm quitting the baseball team to do it.
Oh, fuck.
And the phone went silent for a couple beats. And then he said, well, I always come to your baseball games. So tell me when the play is and I'll be there for that as well.
What a great dad.
He like transferred his love of me as an athlete to love of me as an artist, and he has not wavered in over 30 years of that. So
he has been an amazing support, and what a great dad to be able to have that.
One of the things about being an athlete is if you step on the field, you have to think that you're the best person there.
How do you translate that to theater? And you got into some theater because you said you kind of had that athletic confidence.
So I used to say I succeeded early on through the arrogance of ignorance. I would call theaters and go, hi, can I talk to the artistic director, please? And they'd be like, what do you want? And I'm like, well, I want to know how that person became an artistic director because that's what I want to do. So I'd like to talk to them about it. And, just things like that. I was so stupid when I interviewed with Dr. Parker at VCU. I was like, oh, I'm going to be directing this one-act play. Have you ever heard of this playwright called Tom Stoppard? Being Dr. Parker went, yes. That's all he said. So I didn't know. There was a lot that I didn't know, but I was never afraid to ask questions and knock on doors.
And see, there's never, as a teacher, someone who does academia, there's never a stupid question. There are stupid people, but there are no stupid questions. And you have to let people ask those questions. And you go, I may sound really dumb, but I have to ask this. And so you go, you don't know.
So when I got hired to run my theater in Kentucky, I get out to Lexington in the fall of 2003, spring of 2004, and I immediately look around and go, "Who's here that can help me?" And there's a small liberal arts college in Danville, Kentucky called Center College. And at the time, they had a faculty of three. A guy named Tony Haig, who at the time when I got there was the president of SETC, a guy named Matthew Halleck, and a guy named Patrick Kagan Moore.
All
And
three men.
I
No way.
sort of, yeah, all three white men. That wouldn't happen these days.
Not these days.
Uh, and I sort of glommed on to all three of them. Tony became a board member at my theater. Matthew is a brilliant designer and designed sets and lights and things like that. Patrick Kagan Moore was a very smart and good director, so I brought him in to direct. They brought me to center to direct and teach for them.
Right.
And Tony was British, and Tony went to
Ah.
a performing arts college called the Rose Bruford College of Theatre and Performance in London.
Oh, here we go.
And
Okay.
and so they had an exchange program because they have a program at Rose Bruford called the American Theatre Arts Program, which has always tripped me out that these kids come from all over the UK to London to study American theater. Uh,
Yes.
but anyway, so they were bringing students over to spend a semester. So in your second year in this program at Rose Bruford, you have to do a semester in the United States, and they have a number of schools spread around the country. And so they were like, "Hey, how could we get the students involved with your theater as well?" And Steve Dykes, who is the program director of the American Theater Arts Program, we met at SETC. And so him and Tony and I kind of mapped out this sort of three-pronged partnership between my theater, Center College, and Rose Bruford that included me, because I was going to make sure this was going to happen, me
Yes.
going to London to teach.
Good.
So I started doing that in 2006. And on my first trip over, the very first show I saw at the National was Ben Johnson's The Alchemist,
Holy
starring
shit.
Simon Russell Beale. And oh God, oh, he's like my favorite actor, Alex Jennings. So Simon Russell Beale and Alex Jennings. And while I was there, the National has that great bookstore.
Okay, he was in The Terror. Did you watch The Terror?
I did, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
fuck. Carl was
Yeah.
watching that and went, what the hell are you watching? And it was horrifying, but what a great show.
Yes.
He was terrific. He was wonderful.
So while I was there, I bought a whole bunch of books, including Richard Eyre's diaries. And at that point, I kind of only knew him tangentially, but I devoured his diaries. And then I bought his autobiography and I devoured that.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy is speaking to me. So fast forward a couple years later, after I left my theater, Rose Bruford was kind enough to still keep bringing me in as a visiting lecturer, even though I didn't have the theater anymore. So I was at Texas Tech, and I knew going into Texas Tech that I wanted to write about Granville Barker for my dissertation. And the guy who was the principal at Rose Bruford at the time had been friends with Richard Eyre, and he appears in Richard Eyre's diaries. And so Richard Eyre was the honorary president of the school. So I said to him,
we didn't talk about that during the pre-chat. You didn't tell me.
Yeah. So he was the honorary president at Rose Bruford. So I emailed the principal, which is their version of the university president.
Okay.
And I said, hey, I'd like to write Richard Eyre a letter. Yeah.
Athletic confidence, right.
I'd like to interview him for my dissertation. If I send you a letter, can you get it to him for me? And he was like, I'll see what I can do. So I did. Dropped it in the mail, like old school snail mail to the UK.
With an actual stamp. Right.
With a lot of stamps to pay the postage.
Right.
But I basically said, who I was and how much his diaries had meant to me. And I referenced he was directing Hamlet with Daniel Day-Lewis and Judi Dench.
Oh my God.
Just bereft over it not working well. And his daughter Lucy came in and brought him a sandwich, and it just made me think of my own kids. And I just kind of talked about that, how I felt so connected to him as a father and as a director. And even though I was never going to direct at his level, I could still feel what it was that he was feeling. A couple weeks later, I get an email from him. And he's like, I loved your letter. Thank you so much for writing. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on Granville Barker. And so instead of leaving it at that, again, this idea of what the hell, the worst he can say is no, I said, actually, I'm going to be in London in a couple months. Would it be possible to interview you in person?
I friggin' love that. I friggin' love
And,
that. I love
and
it.
he said, yes, it would. And so uh, I met him in the spring in person in the spring of 2012. I have never been so nervous in my life. He was directing the pajama game. He said at the time, Granville Barker wouldn't be too thrilled about this.
Pajama game. And I'm like, what?
He actually told me why he did it.
Why? Why did you?
Growing up, it was his sister's favorite musical, but he wanted to do it for her because she loved it so much as a kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
That's fair.
So we met. He was at the German Street Studios rehearsing, and they had a cantina, and we met and had lunch. I had my my little recorder on and asked him a bunch of questions and
Not your phone. You had your recorder.
yeah, no, because this was, iPhones weren't that advanced yet. But he was delightful and he insisted on buying my lunch. He was like, "You've come all this way. The least I can do is pay for your lunch." And so he's featured in my dissertation. There's a whole addendum that's just my interview with him, talking about, and I had to edit some things out of it because he had some interesting things to say about people. And I let him read it. And he was like, "Could you please not put part in?" I have my rough draft copy where he says some things that are very pointed and I think probably very true. So he's in my dissertation, and we've just kept in touch over the years. I will email him on occasion. And so he did a podcast in January of 23 called Stage Door Johnny.
When I was there in 1988, he was coming in, right?
Okay.
And we met him.
What's his name? Jonathan Cake?
No.
Oh, you're talking about Richard Eyre when he was coming in as the AD. Yeah.
Yes, when he was coming in as the AD, we met him very briefly, and we were all sitting on the floor because they were giving us sonnets without any punctuation.
Uh-huh.
We had to look at it because they said the only person that can do this is Anthony Hopkins. No problem. I've got this. We'll just do it. But he came in and he listened to us, and there were like, I don't know, 20 of us in there. But basically, the Royal National Theater was started with the Olivier, right? Yep. Peter Hall. Yep. Richard Eyre was coming in as I was in there. Trevor Nunn came in.
Yep.
Nicholas Heitner. Rufus Norris.
Rufus is he's stepping down in the spring.
And I don't know. I tried before we met tonight. I said, please pronounce this for me on the internet. Indu Rabasingham. And they've got the 3 theaters there that I love that were still there.
Yeah.
Olivier, Dorfman, and the Littleton, and an amazing bookstore.
I still refer to the Dorfman as the Cottesloe. I hate the name Dorfman.
I don't like it either.
Dorf on golf or whatever. But yeah, they renamed it during the renovation because the Dorfman family gave a whole bunch of money. But I still kind of refer to it as the Cottesloe.
The Cottesloe, that's what it was when I was there.
Yeah.
And I just had to see, I saw 20 plays the entire time I was there. But the National on the Thames was one of my favorite places. And
it's my favorite place too. Yeah.
Well, I know we have that in common as well. Now, I was there a lot sooner than you were, but right there. And then one of the shows that was playing that summer was Stephen Ray, before he did The Crying Game, was in The Chakran.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people don't know that play, but it was so friggin' funny.
Yeah.
And he was all over the place, running around and getting tired. And Tony Church, who I think I mentioned earlier, he was one of my favorite professors there, right? Okay. So when I was trying to get into some other things, I had him write because he loved me. He loved my work. I don't know why.
Because he's smart.
You're so sweet. I don't know why, but he did. And his brother Gavin did as well. His brother Gavin was a playwright. They both have since passed away. But Tony Church came to the States and he started a national conservatory where? Here in Denver,
Denver.
at
Yep.
the Denver Center of Performing Arts, with a woman who I'm working with right now,
Nice.
Jennifer McCrae Rincon, who is here right now. I love her work. She's a graduate from Yale. I have been asked to be in the ensemble starting in January.
Let's
We have
go.
David Hyde Pierce is coming. They do like
So you'll have to talk to David Hyde Pierce because he played Horatio in the Kevin Kline Hamlet that Liviu Choulet directed.
okay, you need to like write me that because I'm like
It all connects back.
okay, it
Always
all
connects
does, but look how much wine I've had.
back.
So Book Click has done me well, but I'm not going to remember.
Yes,
So you got to email me that. But
I will.
it all comes back around. But your knowledge, Rick, is so astounding to me, and what you've done. And I have to say that we've talked about you and Karen Ward, both working in Virginia and doing this great work in Virginia at these two universities. Um, I love you both so much, and I have such respect for you.
Thank you.
I lost my mother very early. She was 57,
Mhm.
but I didn't lose a partner. You lost your partner, Laura, who was beautiful, and it
Yeah.
was not fair, and it was horrible. Karen lost her partner. He had a heart attack while he was on the bed.
Yeah. That's you mentioned that. That's unbelievably
She
sad.
had a 1-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
We both, here's the thing. It's just, bad things happen to everybody, and
Right.
we can either take them and use them and we can move on, or we can live and just be, "Bleh, life is horrible and I hate people and I hate everything and blah, blah, blah." But you know what? We can live there for a little while.
Mhm.
That's fine. Or we can move forward and go, you know what? Nope, got to move forward. And when you
Right.
do that, you find, your life there at Hampton, or you find Pat, and
Yep.
you find your life there in Virginia again with your
Yeah.
friends and your people who are going to be there to support you. And
Let's
um,
talk.
let me ask you some questions. I need to do. You and I
Yeah.
have talked. I knew this was going to happen. We're going to have to make this a 2-part series. But you said you had a project. I'm going to come back to that before we stop.
Right.
There's a project you might and or may not be able to talk about that happens in 2025. Something that
Yeah.
we can talk about in a minute. But I have a rapid fire thing that my daughter, who is a senior at CU, she said, I listen to these podcasts all the time. And there's a girl that does a TikTok. And you need to do this with your guests. So I have one for actors and I have one for directors. You ready?
Yes.
Number one, Rick, why directing?
I discovered early on that I really didn't like acting. I thought I was going to be good at it. I had to work really hard to be mediocre at it. And I felt like when the audience showed up that we were sort of being invaded, and I realized that I loved process.
Invaded.
Yeah, I love being in rehearsals. And obviously you can't do theater if you don't have an audience. And there are directors who will say things like, "Oh, I never count what the audience is thinking," and I think they're full
Oh,
of shit. They're the final ingredient. Um, but if I'm being honest, they're my least favorite ingredient. My favorite parts of rehearsals are the first table read, the
yes.
first stumble through,
Yes.
the first night of tech.
Yes.
My least favorite night of rehearsal is the final dress rehearsal. Because for the longest time, like the actors and you're inhabiting the same space. Then you move into the theater, and suddenly they're in the dressing rooms, and I don't go into dressing rooms
No.
because that's their space.
Yep.
So I really loved process, but the joke is, I tell people I became a director because I can't act, I can't write, and I can't design, but I can tell other people how to do it.
I think you're a better designer than you think. Okay. Number two,
Yeah.
do you precast often?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If I, like if there's something that Scott and I want to do, or Deborah Clinton or Sarah Heifetz or any number of you, then I absolutely will. I don't make any apologies for precasting because these are
No.
my people.
Oh,
But
really?
I'm also upfront about it. I'm not going to have auditions and then have people read for roles that have already been cast, because that's a waste of their time and it's a waste of my time. And I really cannot stand directors who disrespect actors. And that's one of the things that Richard Eyre talks about, that he finds it astonishing the number of directors who don't like actors. And I'm like, how can you do this if you don't like actors?
Gotta
I
like
revere actors. I love actors. I love what they can do. I love giving them a suggestion and watching them make it 10,000 times better than I ever imagined. So, yeah, so it sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It all depends. You don't announce you're going to do Hamlet and hope Hamlet shows up at the auditions.
no, you get your Hamlet as your anchor and
Yeah,
you cast around
yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah.
Have you ever fired an actor?
Yes,
Have you ever been fired as a director?
I have not.
What type of actor is your favorite actor to work with and why?
I love actors who are imaginative, who are smart, who are emotionally available, and who are comfortable in their bodies. Antonin Artaud, who was a wonderful lunatic, called actors the athletes of the heart. And I love that phrase. Artaud.
Okay, Anton Artaud. You have,
Uh,
I mean, I thought I was a good director, and then I talked to you, and I'm like, I'm not. All
yeah,
right.
so I mean,
So,
I love actors who are team players. You know, I grew up as a team player, and I grew up in the ultimate team sport, because baseball is a team sport, but it's played by individuals. So
yes,
if I'm up to bat, it's just me. It's not the team. And
yes.
so I still got to do my job. In the same way, if you throw an actor a line, they've got to have their response. They got to know what they're saying. They can't count on the team. I mean, I guess you can if you go up or whatever. But I love that.
Have you ever had to go into a show feeling unprepared?
Yes, I was forced to direct Taming of the Shrew at Barksdale, and I didn't want to do it. And I was like, I gave an interview. There was a there. I don't know if you remember Punchline magazine or
Yes,
whatever it
I
was.
do. From Richmond, Virginia. Yes, I do.
Yes, and so I when Scott and I did Jails, Hospitals, and Hip Hop, I gave
Which
this
was
interview.
brilliant, by the
Thank
way.
you. I was like, this is the future of. I want to get a time machine. I want to go back in time and punch myself in the face, because I was like, this is the future of theater. I said this in this interview. You can have Tennessee Williams, you can have Arthur Miller, you can have William Shakespeare. Those motherfuckers ain't got nothing to say to me or my generation, because I was a dumbass. Suddenly, Taming of the Shrew falls into my lap, and I don't want to do it. So Noreen Barnes, who was Dr. Parker's replacement at VCU, was
Yes.
my dramaturg for the show, and I basically handed her the script and I said, "Would you cut this so I could do it with like 10 actors or whatever it was?" I never read the play. I cast the show without reading the play. We had at the first table read, I still hadn't read the play, and I didn't want to have a table read. So instead, at the first rehearsal, we watched 10 Things I Hate About You.
Oh my God, that is hysterical. Did you ever watch Kiss Me Kate before you did it?
I didn't, but I used Kiss Me Kate music in the show.
Oh, good for you. See, that's fabulous.
I used Brush Up Your Shakespeare as
Oh,
intro music.
I've always wanted to play Kate. I thought I would
Yeah.
be a great Kate. And I would love
Oh
Kiss
yeah.
Me Kate because it's musical theater, because it's what I do. I thought it would be fun, but I'm way too long in the tooth for a lot of these roles now. Okay, favorite director. I think we already know.
Well, there's a no. I mean, Richard Eyre, obviously. Livia Choulet, Benny Ambush, Nam Panofsky, Marion McClinton, who I got to work with at Arena Stage. Rest in peace. So many. Joanne Acolytis, who I got to watch work at Arena.
Joanna
Yeah,
Colodis.
I got to watch her direct Dance of Death by Strindberg while I was interning there.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, that's
yeah,
huge.
yeah. So, number, I mean, so many, and all of them in their own way have been influences on me, and I will occasionally see them in my work,
Well,
which is
Dr. Campbell said, we're all stealing at all times.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
It's not stealing, it's borrowing. But
exactly.
all the stuff's already been done before. It's how we reuse it.
He's
Okay.
right.
So favorite production, theater production. You
Of mine or that I've seen?
know that you've seen.
So that's it's some combination of the original production of the Laramie Project,
Um,
uh, the Effect at the National Theatre in London, Cheek by Jowl's production of "'Tis Pity She's a Whore" in Romania, Warhorse in the original production in the Olivier before it went to the West End. Uh, and I can't answer. My favorite production of mine is the next one I'm about to start.
really?
Yeah, I
Oh,
can't.
okay.
That's like asking me which kid of mine is my favorite.
I know.
Um,
So that's a good thing because you should always be looking forward to the next
yes, yeah.
favorite film and why. Film, not theater, film.
Uh so favorite classical film is Casablanca. I think it's just perfect.
It is.
I love them. I love the I'm shocked to see gambling going on here. Here are your winnings. Thank you. You know, I just Rick Blaine. I think anybody named Rick, except for like Rick Santorum and Rick Perry, are cool. Um, so Casablanca is my favorite classical film. I love Humphrey Bogart. I think he's the coolest guy who ever lived. Favorite contemporary film is Shakespeare in Love. I mean, it's like the perfect love letter to the
It
theater.
is perfect, is it not?
Yeah.
And
And like I stole this from Dr. Parker when he would tell stories in theater history. He would say, if it didn't happen that way, it should have. And that's how I feel about seeing Shakespeare in Love.
so you have good quotes about Dr. Parker, even though I believe he didn't really necessarily say nice things about me
He
or
did,
you.
we did not get
You
along.
know what? We didn't go along either. And
I'm not gonna
he
speak
was
ill of
not,
the dead. I
he
learned
was
a lot from him.
I did. Well, I never did because he didn't think that I was talented enough.
Right,
He said, you either have to pick, you're going to be an actress or you're going to be a director. And I went, why can't
right,
he be both? And he closed, we were in the pack building and he closed the elevator on me. He went, you have to pick. Boom.
right.
And went up to the second floor to his office. And I was like, why
So
do I have to pick? And I went to like
so
Harry, Hopper, and, Kenneth, and they went, you don't need to pick. You're both.
yeah. So he and I got trapped on the elevator once, just the two of us, 20 minutes of my life. But I will say, I didn't care for him, but I learned a lot from him. So
He loved your wife, though. What did he say to your
he
wife?
did.
You? What did he say?
So at my thesis defense, he basically said, you would leave my office. He's telling everybody this. You would leave my office and I would shake my head and I would think to myself, what are we gonna do with this boy? And then I would see Layra, which is what he called her. I would
Laura.
see Layra come up and hug you, and I would say, well, if she sees something in him that's worth it, I guess we'll keep him around.
Uh-huh. He said to me before the elevator closed, he said, you have to pick, young lady. Are you a
Right,
director or are you an actress?
right, yeah,
Kenneth went, oh, you are a director. And
right.
so he did not like Kenneth. They did not think along the same lines.
They did not, and I sort of clashed with Dr. Campbell as well.
Yeah.
It was so funny. Once I graduated, like the first major production I directed in Richmond was Eric Bogosian's Suburbia.
I
And
saw it. It was fabulous.
thank you. And he saw it too. And I literally went to his office like I had just done a directing scene, even though I'd been out of school for a year.
Yep.
And I was like, can I have some feedback? And he was like, yeah, you got it. You got
Uh-huh.
it. And that, like, that the amount of validation I got from that one conversation with him, I think maybe changed my life.
He thought very highly of you, whether you know it or not. Okay.
Joyce told me that after he passed away.
Yeah. Yeah. There are lots of things about Kenneth that after you passed away were questioned. But,
Joyce told me that as well. Yes.
I-
And also, we would ask him when he was going to retire, and he would say, why would I retire? I get free postage and my summers off.
he didn't tell me he was sick when he got actually something called Baltic
Uh-huh.
cancer. And we speaking of about Romania and all these other countries, and I'm like, he what? And
Right.
he actually added like all this like Clorox to his water when we were in Romania and all this. And like 3 years later, he ended up getting it. But nobody, he said, do not tell Dawn. Don't tell Dawn. And I was like, why won't he tell me? And finally,
Right.
Robin Arthur said, you need to know that he's really sick. And so I went and took Einstein bagels. I don't know why I thought Einstein bagels were going to help, but I said I need to let you know that I know, and I don't know what to think. And she actually called me, Joyce did, and said, "Do you want to come say goodbye?" And I went, "You know what? I don't think he would want me to come be there."
Did you come to his memorial that we had at Barksdale?
No. Wait, stop. Bingo. I spoke.
I thought so.
I
Because
spoke.
I spoke as well.
I know you didn't. You were fabulous. I spoke.
I basically read a letter that a friend of mine wrote for him because she was too emotional to speak,
Yeah.
and then I added a little bit of my own stuff to it. But yeah,
Yeah. I actually wrote something about he liked to see what kind of metal people were
uh
made.
huh.
And then she wanted me to lead people in Old Lang Syne, and I didn't know the words, and I was like, "Oh Jesus Christ, this is not going to go well."
I remember she thought it was funny because whoever put the program together for it called him Scotch-born director instead of
Yeah,
Scottish, and
yes,
she said Kenneth would have thought this was a very funny way to describe him.
yes. He no, absolutely. And I loved his brother. Did you ever meet his brother?
No,
Oh, his brother was fantastic. Okay. Other than this podcast, what's been the highlight of your career?
I think you just took the answer away from me, Dawn. No, the highlight of my career, I would have to say, directing at the Romanian National Theater in Craiova.
I would say that's probably pretty correct.
Yeah.
Okay, in one word, I'm so fascinated by what your answer is going to be on this.
Okay.
Dr. Rick St. Peter.
Yes, Dawn Westbrook.
I'm not a doctor yet. I'm a director, but I'm not a doctor. Intimacy directors, yes or no?
Sure.
Have you used one? Yes.
No, but I would. I would. I'm in favor of anything that will make actors comfortable. And I know
Do
people
you not
scoff at that.
think that you can do that as your job?
I do, but if they would feel as more comfortable having a third party there, I'm all in favor of it.
But you know you're not allowed to be in those rehearsals as a director.
So I would still map out everything that I wanted to see. And if I didn't see it, then they would go back into rehearsal without me and change it until they got it right.
You would meet with the intimacy
Yeah.
director. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That whole idea of intimacy directing in theater is fascinating to me because
Mm-hmm.
it's my job to make them feel comfortable, and I
Right.
talk to people and
I
watch
agree.
this whole thing and blah blah blah. And
I
I'm
won't I won't ever turn my nose up at any potential resource. Any,
absolutely okay.
anything that can help make the show the best thing that it can make, I will, because the thing I tell my directing students all the time is, and this is one of the things that Campbell used to talk about, is where does your own ego come into it? And Richard Eyre calls it the authorial I. Authorial, like as an author, I, capital I, not I like I'm looking at it, but like
I gotcha.
he's like, when you go watch a symphony, the conductor's up there waving his arms around, even if the musicians aren't paying any attention to them. But when you go see a production, the director's almost invisible. Where does that come in? And so the thing I tell my directing students is it's never about you. I directed Romeo and Juliet for Cincinnati Shakespeare Company years ago, and the Cincinnati Enquirer, they I hate grades, but they gave the show like a B plus or something. And the review was like, this
Bad.
was great, and this was great, and this was great, and this was great. And then it said something like, my only complaint is with director Rick St. Peter and blah, 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 blah. So the only time all the great stuff I didn't get mentioned, the one time I got mentioned was to slag off on me. And you just go, okay, you either take it or you don't. And that's one of the things, again, there'll be times when I'm up to the plate where I'll hit a home run, and there'll be times when I strike out. I don't set out to do either one of those things. I set out to do the
Right.
best.
Right. Um, How comfortable are you with AI running the show and not a person running the board?
Not fucking at all. I don't want any AI near me. It's so funny. I'm not a religious person. I think that AI has shown me that there is, in fact, a soul in the human body where art comes from, because every bit of AI generated art I see is utterly soulless.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure one of these days it'll be great. So it's so funny. When I was in ninth grade, my high school baseball coach came up to me. I was standing out in the outfield, and he said, "Son, you have a ton of potential, and that means that one day you may be good, but right now you ain't worth a shit." And then he spit tobacco juice on my cleats and walked away. And
Uh-oh.
so maybe one of these days AI will be good. Right now, I don't think it's worth a shit.
But people think it's worth a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, no,
I
not
mean,
for me.
stage managers, Broadway stage managers hit a button and that's it.
You can't. You can of all the arts, you cannot remove the human from the center of the theater. Theater is built on the human scale. It works with humans coming together in groups and telling each other stories. And the more removed we get from that, the less theater it is, and the more it becomes something else.
Okay, that's fair. Who do you wish could see your work?
Richard Eyre.
Bingo. What would be your highest honor?
Um, oh gosh. So in my fantasy land, I'm in London, and Prince Charles is about to cross, or King Charles is about to cross the street, and he's about to get hit by a bus, and I save him, and he knights me, and I become Sir Doctor Rick St. Peter.
Okay, wait, you're saving him, but you're not like getting it because of all your theater work?
Well, I mean, no, then he'd be like, "Oh, thank you for saving me. Here, go run the Royal Court Theater, and we'll knight you for your services to me and the theater."
But you didn't
Uh,
do it because of your artistic work. You get it because of you saved him. That's
as
interesting.
long as I have it, I don't care how I get it. I would love to be a knight. I would love to get knighted.
Knighted or
I don't know, honors. I don't like. I think awards for arts are silly. Um, if
I
you and
don't.
I
I
go,
love them. I love them.
if you and I go play basketball, we know that there's a winner and a loser.
Okay.
But if you put your show up against my show and someone says this is the best, I wish there was a way that we could transform those from awards to celebrations.
Yeah, that's.
And that whole I'm not ever gonna go to. I've never been to an award ceremony. I'm never
Oh,
gonna go
you're
to an
one of
award ceremony.
those.
So
You're one of
I
those.
just don't. I just don't. I don't know. I don't really believe in them. So I wouldn't. I would love for. I guess the highest honor for me would be when I die, for a bunch of my current and former students and colleagues to have a big ass party and tell stories about my work and working with them and whatever influence I've had, good or bad, on them.
I don't wish your death, but I do think that would probably happen.
Yeah,
How's that?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, we know who your mentor is, but we want to say it again one more time.
Well, again, there's not just one. My
Oh,
most important mentor has been Benny Ambush.
yep,
Uh, but my sort of North Star is Richard Eyre.
yep.
But there have been Nam Panofsky has been one. Um, uh, Randy Strauderman for a while was one. I've been fortunate. I've had a number of people. I didn't get here on my own. I've had a number of people who were ahead of me who reached a hand back to help pull me up. And I feel I have that obligation to pay it forward to people coming up behind me as well.
Well, I don't know how, I mean, you're an athlete, but you got where you did, and you've got a huge following in the arts and in theater, and you did
Thank
it.
you.
So good for you. What show, if any, influenced you the most? And that's my last. Rapid
I
fire.
mean, so it's a funny answer, but it's The King and I because I was 21 years old. I'd never seen a play in my life. I was a history major. I mentioned this in our pre-talk. I was going to go to law school and become the Republican governor of Virginia.
My husband was so
Hilariously.
pleased to hear.
And I took an intro to theater class as an elective. We had to go see the plays, and the first play they did was The King and I, and the show started, and Anna Leonowens came on stage, and she took my breath away, and I was like, I got to meet her. And so I started taking theater classes because I saw that show. And I was the same professor who taught the intro class also taught the next semester taught a makeup for theater class. And I was so ignorant on how theater worked. I thought okay, we have to go see the shows in an intro class. If we're doing a theater makeup class, every actor must have their own makeup artist. So we'll probably have to work on the show, and this girl will be in the show, and I'll become her makeup artist, and I'll meet her, and I'm charming. She'll fall in love with me, and that's almost what happened. She was in the class, and it was Laura, and I sort of pursued her all semester, and we started dating in April. So my whole life doesn't happen without me seeing The King and I at Christopher Newport University.
So, you never know what influence you're having on people in the audience. When my mother was diagnosed at 57 with ovarian cancer, that night that I found out, I went to Virginia Museum Theater, which you talked about earlier, and I
Uh-huh.
saw Greater Tuna. Now,
Ah,
it's not a funnier show than Greater Tuna. And my friend took me to it, and I thought, I'm not in the mood for laughing. I do not feel like laughing at all. I don't want to do this. And man, it took me away for 2 hours. I
yeah,
didn't know where the future was going, but it took me away for 2 hours. And I thought, bless the theater
yeah.
that these two actors took me away for 2 hours and made me laugh. And thank God that I could forget and enjoy
Yep.
and laugh because I knew that in the future, I didn't know I was going to be laughing much. But right now, in this moment, I could laugh and enjoy.
I was directing the Rocky Horror Show at the Warehouse Theater in Greenville, South Carolina, when Laura was in hospice, and it was my sanctuary. For a few hours a day, I could come and just kind of leave the outside world. Like Stanislavski said, leave the outside world outside the rehearsal room for just a little bit.
If you,
Conversely, after she died, I had a theater call and asked me if I wanted to direct Wit, and I was like,
ooh, I
no, I don't.
don't know.
Thank you.
You
So
want to
yeah,
tell people who don't know what wit is what it is?
it's a play about a woman dying of. She says in the very first scene, "I have stage 4 breast cancer," and Laura was diagnosed. And it's funny because it's not funny, but when Laura told me she had stage 4 breast cancer, I immediately thought of Wit, and I was like, "Oh fuck." So yeah, so no, I did not want to direct that play. 9 years later, I still don't want to direct that play. As brilliant as it is, it is
Oh,
a brilliant, brilliant, beautiful play.
oh yeah.
I cannot go near it.
Well, there's a play that I don't want to do that was put towards me to direct The Rabbit Hole to be directed and or
I did direct that.
I to be the wife in that
Yeah.
or to direct it. And I had just had my daughter Sydney at age
Uh-huh.
40, and I went, can't do it. I'm sorry. I love David Lindsay Bear, and I did
So,
Good People, and I did the lead. But
uh-huh.
I can't do that play because I can't think about my daughter and my dog
Yeah.
running in front of a car and getting hit. I
I
can't,
directed it. I
and I
directed it
wrote
at
it.
my theater. I directed it at my theater in Kentucky, and Laura played the mother. What I can't remember what her name is.
It
And
doesn't matter. It is Nicole Kidman did it in the movie, but
like I kitted out the bedroom with stuff from my son's room.
mm-mm,
So
mm-mm.
I mean it was I made it as real for her as I could possibly
So
make it. And
she
we
did
had
it. Laura
She
did it.
did, yeah. Becca, that's the character's name is Becca.
She was able to like rise above that. I can't.
Yes, she was.
No, I can't do that. I have absolutely admired your work,
Thank you.
adored talking to you tonight. I'm so sorry for your diagnosis, but I so admire your working through it. I'm so happy, and I know Laura would be happy that you are moving forward, and
She
being
told
happy in
me
life.
she told me on her deathbed that she wanted me, if I ever found somebody, she just wanted me to be happy, and she wanted that person to be nice to our kids. And I've completely lucked out with Pat.
And when I saw you kind of being friends, quote unquote, with her on Facebook,
Uh-huh.
I thought, you know what? He could not have a better quote unquote friend. Hope this moves into a better, they're going to their nag's head, they're eating their
Right.
food. I'm hoping this works into something better.
Yeah.
Laura was a different woman. Pat is a different lady.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not the same, but
No,
they both bring you joy. And
they
there's
do.
nothing wrong with that. Um,
Right.
everything right with that.
Yes.
And I think that you are amazing. I love what you brought to Richmond. I love that you brought Scott to Richmond.
Me too.
And even though,
Scott was one of my groomsmen in my wedding this summer too.
and he's like your godfather. Like what is like godfather, one of your kids or
No,
something?
Benny Ambush is my son's godfather, but Scott is basically my brother.
Yeah, well, yeah. So he's going to be on season 3, and I
That's
cannot
awesome.
wait to
I
have him.
can't wait for that.
And I wish you the best. I hope that you
Thanks.
do your health. I hope
Listen, I'm 1,000% serious about coming and directing Tallulah Bankhead for you.
you know what? It's a really funny show. I've got a script right here underneath this little envelope right here. I'm going to send you a script.
Okay.
You see if you like it. I'm doing all my research. You know me. I
Right.
did one flapper. I might as well do the second.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't know if you remember when I tried to get you, I tried to get the Lexington Public Library to partner with me to bring Zelda to Lexington. Do you
I
remember
do
that?
remember that. Yes, I
It
do.
was like, I think it was like the centennial of her birth or something, maybe.
Yes, yes.
And we were trying to get her there, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But I always thought that you were brilliant in that.
Well, you are so sweet, and I will tell you one thing. You know, as an actor, I'm a director, but I'm also an actor, and I'm just a theater lover. I love people's talent, and I love seeing other people succeed. And but you have made me feel so good tonight, but on a professional level. What you do for the theater is astounding, and I just
Thank you.
have a high regard for your work and what you're going to continue to do with.
Are you going to ask me my career question? You haven't asked me that yet.
Oh my God, yes. Okay, I think I already know the answer,
No,
but
you don't. I'm going to surprise you.
you are okay. Good.
Yeah, but we're gonna do this. We're gonna hold on. Let's set the scene. So
Okay.
we have to officially take it from you asking the full question, and
Okay,
then
but I've
allowing
already
you.
had almost book cliff. Thank you. I've had almost the entire bottle because it's been.
And I haven't selected my bottle yet either.
Okay, first of all, what bottle do you select?
How can I not choose a wine called Ensemble? That is already my favorite name of a bottle of wine ever. So I cannot wait for that.
Ensemble, and we will send it to you next week.
Thank you, Book Cliff, for sponsoring this. This is really great.
Thank you. And my little earrings, and I hope
Yes.
that Pat doesn't realize that you drank that bottle tonight and just spit it out. So now, my question to you is this. If you were not, and you said you're going to surprise me.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure. If you were not doing theater and you were not the brilliant, oh my God, you so surpass anything that I've ever even thought as being a director. What would you be doing as a career?
So I was supposed to be a high school history teacher and baseball coach. And had that happened for me, I would have probably dropped dead of a heart attack by now. In my next life, or in an alternate universe, if we believe Rabbit Hole, I make wildlife documentaries for a living. That's what I would love to do.
Wildlife documentaries?
Yes. I would love to go to, the Serengeti or the Amazon, and make documentaries and document the kind of receding nature that, our human beings are eating the world alive, and we're losing more and more of these things. But that's what I would love. I was actually watched documentary on venomous snakes. But no, I would love. That's what the amount of patience that these people have to get like the perfect shot is astonishing. Like the stuff that you do with like David Attenborough and things like that. I would love to do that.
Do you like film directing? Have you done much at all?
So there is a short film that I did in Romania that's also on my website. And the play that we did off Broadway at the Midtown International Theater Festival.
And we have that. We're going to post that, guys. So don't
Yeah.
worry about it. We got it.
In 2011, we got money to shoot a film. So we made a feature length film that's available on Amazon.com. It's called Checking In by Brian Hampton. You can rent it on Amazon.
Okay, say
it's
that
the
again.
original. It's
Say
called
that again.
Checking In. The film and the play is called Checking In, like you're checking into a hotel.
Okay.
It's about a group of friends from high school who reunite for a weekend in Atlantic City. Hijinks ensue. And we shot it in New Jersey in 2011. We didn't have Atlantic City money, but we shot it in Wildwood. And this hotel let us kind of turn it in, as best as we could into a casino.
Right.
I enjoyed it. It was like, I felt like, and when I shot the film in Romania, and then when I directed Hamlet the first time, I cut the play within the play, and I figured it was a multimedia production. And so the actor who played Hamlet also played the ghost, and we filmed all his stuff. I did The Mousetrap as like a student black and white pretentious film. And so I've done enough to know that it's a nice place to visit, but I don't want to live there. And one of the things that makes me crazy about being working in the theater in the United States as opposed to being in Europe is that everyone is like, "Oh, when are you going to go make movies?"
Doesn't have as big of an audience. I know.
Right. If if Steven Spielberg called me tomorrow and said, "Come direct a film," I would probably do it, but it's not something that I feel like I have to do.
Yeah, but you would do it and you'd be fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Look how much of this I have had.
Right on. That's a good night.
Oh my God. Do I like the rosé of 2020?
I think you do.
I do. And I have booklets.
So if this gets divided up into 2 episodes, does that mean I get 2 bottles? Does that mean I get 2 bottles of wine?
Yeah, I'll send you 2. Oh my God. I've never, ever in all of my interviews talked to somebody this long. But I knew that when I started talking to you that we would, because we had so many like common denominators.
Right.
And a lot of heart. Laura and Scott and Randy and the National Theater. So I knew we would, but I wish you the best.
Thank you. You too.
I'm very excited for your future. My best with Pat. I hope she enjoyed her fish in Greece.
Yes.
But what a wonderful husband you are to allow her to just go and do her thing.
Oh, I don't allow her to do anything. One of the things that I love the most about her is that she is unbelievably independent. I have always been a sucker for strong women. Laura was and Pat is, and I'm like, yes.
Well,
slap me around and make me do the dishes.
I hope that you do great with 12th Night. You haven't started rehearsals yet?
No, we start Tuesday.
Okay.
Tuesday, whenever people are listening to this, we start Tuesday, October 8th. So.
And you open at the Singleton Center
November 14th.
November 14th. If you want to get tickets, where do they look for them?
Just go to the VCU Arts Theater website.
Okay, there you go.
Right on.
Senior tickets, regular tickets. Go see him. He's worth watching. So go see it. And goodbye, everybody. And thank you.
Thanks, Donna. It's my pleasure.
Well, I think that about does it for this week's podcast. I can't thank you enough for listening. Remember, you can always find this episode and others on Facebook under ACT and any of the other podcast platforms. Or visit my website at dawnwestbrook.com, where you'll find the links from previous seasons and episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and other entertainment enthusiasts. If you have questions or suggestions, I'm as close as an email. I welcome your ideas. And remember, follow ACT on Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, under ActingPod. But for now, as W.C. Fields once said, a man's gotta believe in something. So, my noble artist and my happy troupe of theater trolls, I do believe I shall have another drink. May the footlights burn bright and your interactions, both on stage and off, be rewarding. Thanks for joining me. I'm Dawn Westbrook, your host, and this is ACT. This season's podcasts are being brought to you by the Martha Hill Newell Playwrights Fund and Bookcliff Vineyards, where their wines are always something worth sharing.